Okay, so basically our project is a representation of Brown v. Board and the Little Rock Nine. The main goal of this presentation was to show the hardships that the people in the Little Rock Nine, or that black people as a whole, face. The first thing was Brown v. Board, which happened in 1954. And the overturning of Brown v. Board allowed the desegregation of American schools.
Okay, so I'll continue with the 1 minute history of Brown v. Board and Little Rock Nine. Brown v. Board was a landmark Supreme Court case led by the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall that declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional. And after this declaration, the Little Rock Nine was formed to be the first African American group of children to attend an all-white school. So they kind of helped enforce this new change, and they were the first people to actually go to this all-white school. And the Little Rock Nine were a group of 9 incredibly brave black students consisting of Thelma Mothershed, Minnie Jean Brown, Elizabeth Eckford, Gloria Ray, Jefferson Thomas, Melba Beals, and Terrence Roberts, Carlotta Walls, and Ernest Green. And these 9 students enrolled at a formerly all-white Central High School at Little Rock 9, Arkansas in September 1957. And so we have a few artifacts here. Sydney can continue beginning here.
So this right here is a newspaper from 2 days after the Brown v. Board verdict was released. And to just go into a little bit of detail about it, the writer mentions in the newspaper how various opportunities will now be available for black children as a reality of a segregated education comes to an end. Additionally, this newspaper goes on to explain how Brown v. Board was actually passed. So basically, the big claim with Brown is that though segregated education was allowed, it was not equal. And basically, the whole thing that allowed the segregation of schools was the case Plessy v. Ferguson. With Plessy v. Ferguson, they ran the whole idea of separate but equal. But now that Brown was able to suggest that though things were separate, it was not equal, that is how they were able to overturn Plessy v. Ferguson, and that's how they were able to desegregate the schools. And through this article, it showcases that through Brown v. Board, a new faith in America was born.
Next, we will talk about the Central High School diploma of Carlotta Walls. First, we will discuss the significance of this diploma, which was the fact that she was the first African American woman to graduate from the newly desegregated Central High School. This is so very important because of all the hardships and torment and torture that they faced while being inside of the school, while being pioneers of the civil rights movement at the same time. With all of that pressure, I think that this diploma accurately represents her bravery and perseverance as a person while attending Central High School.
And that right there is a picture of Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, and she was walking towards the school, but she was being verbally attacked by an angry white mob. And slurs were being thrown at her, and around her, there was nooses hanging from trees to intimidate her. But even through all that, she stood her ground, and she was still very, very brave and courageous. Do you want to explain your artifacts?
So, I did Carlotta Wall's dress she wore for her first day of school at Little Rock Central High School in 1957. She was going into her sophomore year and didn't expect to cause such an impact. All she wanted to do was have a top quality education, but instead she was faced with violent segregationists attempting to prevent her from going to school. Even though she was verbally and physically abused on a daily basis, she still managed to graduate on time and became the first African American girl to graduate from Little Rock Central High School in 1960. And my other artifact is Minnie Jean Brown's graduation dress. So she was suspended from Little Rock Central High School in December of 1957 for pouring chili on a boy's head who had tripped her. And 2 months later, in February, she was expelled for calling the girl white trash. Even though she was expelled, she didn't let that discourage her. She moved to New York and attended New Lincoln School, which was a private integrated school. Despite her suspension and expulsion, she still graduated on time in 1959.
I can show this one. So this photo shows the moments after Brown v. Board was successful in 1954. These 3 lawyers share a moment of accomplishment with the abolishment of segregation in public schools. Due to the Supreme Court ruling, segregation in schools was unconstitutional. On the left, we see George E.C. Hayes. In the middle, we see Thurgood Marshall. And on the right, we see James M. Napper. Marshall was the key strategist in an effort to end racial segregation who had challenged Plessy v. Ferguson. He had won a series of court decisions that led to Brown v. Board of Education. Marshall stated that equal means getting the same thing at the same time and in the same place. Marshall constantly tracked Marshall constantly went to various courtrooms overseeing as many as 450 cases. With multiple victories, he eventually became the first U.S. Supreme Court justice. George Hayes and James Nabbert became attorneys in Boiling v. Sharp, which is D.C.'s companion case to Brown v. Board. They urged that the NAACP take a new, more aggressive approach in directly attacking segregated schools is unconstitutional. An account from Brown's lead attorney stated that Hayes had one of the most skillful and elegant trial techniques he had ever seen. Together, Hayes and Nabbert accomplished a legal victory in Boiling v. Sharp, which challenged Washington, D.C.'s public school segregation. Due to the hard work and determination of these three lawyers, they helped contribute to the May 17, 1954 ruling that the plaintiffs were being deprived of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment.
We had one more artifact, but the iPad had just died. So this is the suspension notice of Minnie Jean Brown. And the unique thing about Minnie Jean was that she was a little different from the rest of the Little Rock Nine. She was actually one of the ones who retaliated against the white students. And so in face of harassment, where most people kind of accept it because they're fearful of any more further violence, she kind of retaliated. And so what she did was, when one of the white girls were harassing her, she called her white trash, which ended up in her getting suspended. And then she also retaliated in another instance where a white boy was harassing her in the lunch line, and she ended up pouring a whole bowl of chili on his head. And due to these acts of retaliation, Minnie Jean was suspended and later expelled from Central High, but she did still end up pursuing her education and got her degree and continued to learn. And it just goes to show how courageous she was to actually retaliate even in face of violence, in face of harassment, and it's truly an inspiration. Yeah, that was our presentation.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.